everybody. So in this week's video, we're going to be talking about what we're doing for week 5. So welcome to week 5. So we're focusing on writing strategies. So writing strategies are just different ways that we can improve not only like the way our writing looks, but how we're convincing our audience, how persuasive we're being, and ensuring that whatever the purpose of the writing is, whether it's to persuade, to inform, to entertain, whatever it is, we're using the correct writing strategy to do the best job with that purpose. So next week we're going to talk about and do what's going to be a review for most of you, the rhetorical situation, audience purpose, all of that, and that based on your rhetorical situation, you decide what writing strategies work best. These writing strategies also really work well to help you analyze and expand on the points in your paragraph. So if each paragraph, each main idea is how you're supporting your thesis, you might expand or analyze on that main idea by doing one or multiples of these writing strategies. So with these writing strategies, it doesn't mean that you only use one for an entire paper. You might use all four, you might use two, you might use three in one paragraph, one in another, but you're choosing the writing strategy that works best for your audience and purpose. A lot of the time in previous classes, we kind of just write. We're told to just write and go for it and hope for the best, that our brains vomit out the best words possible. What we're shooting for now in Comp 2 is that you're writing more critically. You're thinking about what is the best kind of writing for this particular professor that I'm writing for, or this particular purpose, if it's a research paper, whatever it is. So this week we're going to go over the 4 sort of biggest, most common writing strategies that you're going to be using in any paper that you write for any teacher, any class, or any purpose. So they are narrating, describing, defining, and compare contrasting. Things you've done honestly since elementary school, but it's thinking about it more critically and more purposefully in how you're using it in your paper. So for each one of these activities this week, when you click on it, and I'll go through each so you can see it, there's going to be a chapter over that writing strategy. So when you click on the PDF, it's going to take you to, clicky here, one of these PDFs. Okay, you're not reading all of these. You're reading 4 of them. But it's going to take you to a PDF chapter over the narrating writing strategy. So how you use narration, when to best use it, what are some examples of it, and what I suggest you do with these chapters is to take notes. So when we get into our micro theme essays and your big term paper at the end of the semester, these are all writing strategies that you'll want to think critically about incorporating into your own writing within there. And we'll go back to them within there. So this week is all about practicing each writing strategy individually, not within a whole paper. So you're going to read the chapter, and then there's an activity to go with each chapter after you've read it. So for the narrating chapter, I want you to choose like a live action event. So a musical, a concert, a sporting event, whatever you want. So go to YouTube or somewhere where you can watch videos, and I want you to narrate 1 to 2 minutes of that live event, whatever it is. Okay. So as you're watching it, take notes about what you see, how you're seeing it, what the details are you using within there. And then you're going to write me a 1-paragraph narration of what was happening in that live event. So you're practicing the skills that you're reading about in chapter 14. For chapter 15, scrolly, there we go. Chapter 15 is all about the writing strategy describing, so being as descriptive as we possibly can. Okay, so again, same thing. You're going to read the chapter, talks about how to describe why we're writing in vivid detail, when to best use it in your writing, and some examples within there. And then I want you, for your practice, to choose some object, idea, person, whatever have you that you want. And I want you to describe it in as much detail as possible without using the actual word. So an example, I usually when I do this with an in-class class, or if you were in class with me, I would tell you to choose an object in my room. So like you could choose my little elephant fidget toy, or you could choose my little nightmare snow globe-ish thing that you could do, whatever you want. So you choose an object around you, person, place, thing, whatever. And I want you to look at it and describe it in just as much detail as possible. So if I look at your description, but you're not using the word at all, you're not using Nightmare Before Christmas snow globe, without using any of those words, I would know exactly what you're describing to me within there. So once you've written your description, then I want you to go a step further. I want you to read that description to somebody, another student, a peer, a friend, parent, whomever, and see if they can guess what you're describing. So were you being detailed enough that they could guess whatever object you were describing within there? And then give me a reflection on how well did it go? Were you descriptive enough? Did they have to keep asking questions? Did they get it immediately? How well did it go? So that's what you're doing for the describing chapter. Chapter 16, scrolly, is over the writing strategy defining. Okay, so it sounds simple. We do definitions, you've done vocab since elementary school. But a good definition can really amp up a paper, be extra persuasive, or if you have a really controversial topic you're doing, and especially if it's controversial because people don't truly understand all the aspects of it, a really good and detailed definition can be very persuasive to a reader within there. So, what I want you to do for your practice after you've read the chapter is to choose something to define in your own way. So, the first option, if you go with my first bullet point, you could choose to define a genre. So, like a film or music or TV genre. So, like horror. My favorite genre would be horror or fantasy. That's what I would define. You could also choose to define something like opera or rock and roll or metal music or country, whatever it is. Create your own definition for a specific genre. Okay. Or push your brain a little extra if you want to really practice with this one and push yourself to define something that is a hard to define concept. So something like loyalty, love, bravery, shyness, femininity, masculinity, whatever there. So think of one of those kind of hard to define concepts that the definition could get tricky and put your own definition to it. Okay. Try not to go over 3-4 sentences with this definition. You want to be able to encapsulate excuse me, encapsulate whatever this genre or term is in about 3 to 4 sentences. Okay. Do not go to Google or a dictionary or dictionary.com or whatever. Don't go there and look at a definition. Because remember, when our writing and what these writing strategies are is putting the argument in your own words and analyzing, and it's your perspective on it. So you don't want to just copy paste a definition. Put in what your definition, so your own experience, your own knowledge of that topic. What is the definition of that term? Okay. And similar to the describing activity, I then want you to read that definition to somebody and see if they can guess what term you're describing within there. Okay. So then you're submitting both your definition and your reflection. And then the last writing strategy for this week, scrolly, is compare contrast. So again, something we've done since elementary school. We compare contrast things all the time. It's naturally how our brains work. It's how we learn. And it's a great strategy to include in a writing, in any essay. If you have either a very difficult concept, so if you're writing a paper about quantum physics, that's super difficult, you're probably going to have to do some analogies, some compare contrast to help your audience and your reader understand what you're talking about. Okay. Or even if you've got a controversial topic and you want people to understand why this topic is important or to understand your side of it, you might have to make an analogy or a compare contrast so the counter, the opposition, can see it from your perspective. So compare contrast are really great strategies to include in your writing. I'm going to pause this video for a second. Okay, sorry about that. I've lost my train of thought because of the phone call now. It's going to come back to me. So yes, the compare contrast make arguments a lot more palatable. So people listen more to us. This is also, and all of these strategies are audience based. So you're going to choose to make a definition or description based on your audience. The compare contrast is probably the most audience based. So if I'm trying to describe how to drive a car, right, and I'm trying to describe to a 16-year-old how to drive a car, I might make comparisons to riding a bike because that's what you first learn to drive. Or I might make comparisons to a go-kart or a golf cart because that might be something you're more familiar with. So I'm going to make an analogy to something that you're familiar with. If I am describing how to drive a car to a 3-year-old, though, I might make a comparison to a spaceship or something like that because that's what's going to work for that audience. So your analogies or your compare contrast, you base it off your audience. If you know your audience is really going to struggle with this topic, you're going to choose how to make that analogy based on them, right? So I want you to read the chapter on compare contrast. It gives you a lot of examples, some ways to tackle that, ways you can use in your own writing. And then I want you to write an analogy. I want you to write a compare contrast over a topic or a process that you can use a comparison with. So an example, like when I teach creative writing and I talk about how to write an entire novel, right? That's a big thing. So I've taught novel courses now. And to help people understand all the different aspects of writing a novel and what goes into it and how they work together, I like to compare it or make an analogy to making a meal or making a buffet and how that all works within there. So everybody's familiar with eating. We're all familiar with enjoying food and making food, even if it's just making some hot pockets in the microwave, we can have that similar experience with making a meal. So I'm going to use making a meal as my comparison when I describe to them how to write an entire novel within there. And like I said before, like we have a lot of that comparison. So when you're first learning to drive, your parents are going to make analogies or comparisons to help you learn how to drive a car. Uh, when I learned how to ride a motorcycle, my husband kept making analogies to the car itself. So, like, this is how you drive a car, and this is how it relates to when you're riding or driving a motorcycle. So, we make comparisons to make it easier to understand. So, I want you to choose your own process, something you're super familiar with that you could explain to somebody super quick because you do it all the time. But then I want you to explain it in an analogy within a compare contrast. So then you have that additional example with a compare contrast to make it easier to understand. Okay. So about a paragraph 1 to 2 for your analogy there. So those are all the writing strategies for this week. Okay. Scrolly again. So you're doing narrating, describing, defining, compare, contrast. Those are the four main, most frequently used writing strategies to gain audience attention, to help our audience understand what we're trying to say, and to persuade our audiences, right? So you're reading each chapter, there's the writing response for each one, and then you're submitting. And then next week, we're going to talk about these a bit more. We're going to take and talk about how your rhetorical situation, your audience purpose, all of that, and your rhetorical devices, ethos, logos, pathos, then fit in with all these writing strategies as well, and how we then make decisions with all of this combined when we write an essay or we write anything and make a communication. Okay. So as you're working through all the writing strategies this week, make sure you're emailing me with any questions. If you want any additional examples or you want me to just help you brainstorm, figure out how to write it, let me know. I am here to assist you. But have a fantastic week. I lost my train of thought again. Have a fantastic week, guys.